Let's discuss the best practices of resource planning. 1. Establishing clear objectives and KPI. The first best practice of resource planning is to establish clear objectives and key performance indicators, that is, KPI. This involves defining the goals of resource planning and the metrics that will be used to track progress. This practice is critical to ensure that resource planning aligns with the overall objectives of the organization. For example, if the company's goal is to increase profitability, one of the objectives of resource planning might be to reduce costs associated with resource allocation. This practice requires collaboration between key stakeholders, including executives, managers, and employees responsible for resource planning. 2. Integration with other planning processes. The second best practice of resource planning is to ensure that it is integrated with other planning processes such as sales and operations planning, production planning, and capacity planning. This practice is critical to ensure that resource planning is aligned with the needs of the organization and does not operate in isolation. For example, if the company's sales and operations planning process indicates a spike in demand for a particular product, resource planning can ensure that the necessary resources are allocated to meet the demand. 3. Regular communication and collaboration. The third best practice of resource planning is to foster regular communication and collaboration between departments. This practice is essential for successful resource planning because it ensures that all stakeholders are aware of any changes or issues that may impact resource allocation. For example, if the production team experiences a delay in the delivery of raw materials, this information should be communicated to the resource planning team so they can adjust their plans accordingly. 4. Use of technology. The fourth best practice of resource planning is to utilize technology such as enterprise resource planning, that is, ERP systems, project management software, and workforce management tools. This practice can streamline the resource planning process and increase efficiency. For example, an ERP system can automate many of the tasks associated with resource planning, such as data analysis and forecasting. 5. Data analysis and forecasting. The fifth best practice of resource planning is to analyze data and use forecasting techniques to make informed decisions about resource allocation. This practice is critical to ensure that resources are allocated in a way that maximizes efficiency and effectiveness. For example, data analysis can help identify patterns in demand that can be used to adjust resource allocation accordingly. 6. Continual monitoring and adjustment. The sixth best practice of resource planning is to continually monitor and adjust resource planning in response to changes in demand and supply. This practice is critical to ensure that resource allocation remains aligned with the needs of the organization. For example, if there is a sudden increase in demand for a product, resource planning may need to adjust the allocation of resources to meet the demand. 7. Flexibility. The seventh best practice of resource planning is to ensure that it is flexible to accommodate changes in demand and supply and allow for the allocation of resources in a timely and efficient manner. This practice is critical to ensure that resource planning can adapt to changes in the business environment. For example, if there is a sudden shift in demand from one product to another, resource planning may need to adjust the allocation of resources to meet the new demand. 8. Alignment with company strategy. The eighth best practice of resource planning is to ensure that it aligns with the company's overall strategy and supports its goals and objectives. This practice is critical to ensure that resource planning is not operating in isolation but is aligned with the strategic priorities of the organization. For example, if the company's goal is to expand into new markets, resource planning may need to allocate resources to support this goal. 9. Consideration of resource availability. The ninth best practice of resource planning is to take into account the availability of key resources, including personnel, equipment, and materials. This practice ensures that resource planning is able to allocate resources effectively and efficiently. For example, if there is a shortage of skilled personnel, resource planning may need to allocate resources to provide training and development opportunities to existing employees. Employee training and development. The 10th best practice of resource planning is to ensure that employees have the skills and knowledge needed to effectively execute resource planning by providing training and development opportunities. This practice is critical to ensure that employees are able to utilize the technology and tools associated with resource planning effectively. For example, if the company is implementing a new ERP system, employees should be trained on how to use the system effectively, and IT software customizations may be required to align the system with the needs of the organization. We really thank you for your time spent on this session. Feel free to meet our partners by sending an inquiry email to contact us at t24global.com. Most of our partners have 15 to 20 years industry experience. So, please get in touch for any quick, managed business process and IT consulting needs.